I'm Jamie Cartwright, 32, from Stoke-on-Trent, where the houses are cheap, the gossip's lethal, and ambition dies somewhere between the Aldi, car park, and a pint at the Dog and Duck. I work in IT support, which basically means I get paid to ask boomers if they've tried turning it off and on again, while wondering where exactly my life detoured into this Kafkaesque tech purgatory. Do I love it? Not unless Stockholm Syndrome counts. But hey, the rent gets paid, the Wi-Fi works, and I've developed a worrying emotional attachment to the Greg's app, so we move. So I get this text from my dad, BBQ this Saturday, everyone's coming, bring a smile X, right? Like we're the bloody Waltons and this is a wholesome family reunion instead of what it actually is. A low-budget ambush in a garden, full of broken dreams and undercooked sausages. First off, bring a smile. What am I, a centerpiece, a therapy dog? The audacity of that little X at the end as well, like a kiss from someone who once pawned my childhood bike and called it a teaching moment. Classic dad. Vague, manipulative, and dripping with the kind of fake warmth you only get when someone wants something. Now, to fully appreciate the delusion in that text, you need the context. Just a week prior, I told him, plainly, calmly, without even raising my voice growth, that I wasn't sharing the inheritance. Granddad left me, not a penny. Not for his pipe dream of buying a narrowboat and living off-grid, which, let's be honest, is just code for no one will lend him money anymore, and certainly not for Cheryl's latest midlife business venture and a crystal healing caravan parked behind a petrol station, because apparently what Stoke-on-Trent really needs is more unlicensed chakra realignment next to the Greg's drive-thru. But of course logic doesn't land with my dad unless it's written on a betting slip or screamed during a World Cup match. So instead of accepting that his adult son might not want a bankroll, his pseudo-spiritual retirement plan, he decided to try the oldest trick in the emotionally manipulative handbook. Pretend everything's fine, throw on a BBQ, and guilt me into submission via coleslaw and forced small talk. I could already picture it. Dad standing by the grill like some tragic King Lear with a spatula, Cheryl fluttering around like a Poundland Gwyneth Paltrow, and me, the villain of the piece, expected to arrive with a smile and a check. Because nothing says family unity like passive-aggressive potato, salad, and legal documents hiding under the picnic table. And the worst part, I knew I was going. Not because I wanted to, not even because I cared, but because when your childhood is one long episode of Jeremy Kyle, minus the cameras, you develop this weird involuntary urge to walk straight into the chaos, like some twisted emotional muscle memory. You don't attend to forgive, you attend to witness. To confirm once again that yes, your family is still deeply, profoundly unwell, and you are by some miracle the sanest madman in the asylum. So I packed my emotional resilience read, 2 beers and a charged phone, and mentally prepared myself for what I knew was going to be less family, BBQ, and more trial by sausage. Because if there's one thing my dad loves more than pork belly and pretending to be a decent father, it's staging a showdown where he thinks he's the victim and I'm the ungrateful little sod who forgot where he came from. Well, spoiler alert, I didn't forget. I've just chosen not to drown in it. And I definitely didn't forget to bring my own envelope. Right, let's rewind the emotional car crash, shall we? Granddad dies, peaceful, quiet, wearing his favorite West Ham slippers. Thank God. And shock horror, he leaves me a sizable chunk of money. Me. Not the family. Not Dad and Cheryl and their endless list of unfinished dreams. Not the spiritual Reiki conservatory. Not the koi pond that never happened. Me, Jamie, the only one who visited him when it wasn't convenient. The only one who didn't once try to convince him that a little investment in an NFT cat would be a sound retirement plan. Now, Granddad, bless him, he wasn't subtle. Once said to me, pint in hand, fag on, your dad's got more debt than morals. Don't let him sniff this money. Which, coming from a man who thought voting Tory once was an act of rebellion, felt strangely profound, and honestly bang on. He knew what would happen if Dad got a whiff. The man can't even handle a scratch card without spiraling into delusions of grandeur. So when I said no, calmly, maturely, with only a mild amount of sarcasm, to their renovation proposal, which, by the way, was less renovation and more back garden Vegas, Dad lost what little composure he had left. Enter the dramatic silence, days of it. The man who once rang me at 3 a.m. because the boiler made a weird humming suddenly couldn't reply to a single message. Then came the Facebook phase. You know the one. Passive-aggressive quotes about entitled children, And what goes around comes around. Slapped over moody stock. Images of sunsets and lions. Lions. As if he's some noble beast guarding the pride, not a 50-something man-child. Sulking because he can't have his decking in a lazy spa. Cheryl, who, for the record, once tried to charge me $15 for energy clearing. When I visited, sent me a voice note about how Granddad would have wanted the family to be comfortable. Right. Granddad also wanted to legalize euthanasia for people who wore Ugg boots past 2010, so I'm not sure Cheryl's his official spokesperson. Look, I'm not saying I'm a saint. I've made my fair share of questionable decisions, like trying to make banana bread during lockdown, or texting my ex on New Year's Eve because the fireworks made me emotional. But this wasn't one of them. I said no to handing over Granddad's legacy to people who think a hot tub counts as healing, and suddenly I'm the villain. The prodigal son turned financial gatekeeper. The human embodiment of you've changed. Damn right I've changed. I've stopped letting people siphon my peace like it's bloody petrol. So yeah, apparently I'm selfish, greedy, cold, all because I didn't want to funnel my dead grandfather's savings into a patio and a dream. Funny thing is, they still expected me to come to the BBQ. Smile on, bank card off, ready to soak up the guilt like it's ketchup on a paper plate. But I wasn't coming empty-handed. I had my own paperwork, and mine didn't come with a side of coleslaw. So I rock up, bottle of tepid corner shop lager in hand, the kind that tastes like regret and ruined. GCSEs wearing that half smile you reserve for social events that feel like court summons. You know the look, polite enough to avoid confrontation, dead enough behind the eyes to signal, don't even think about asking me how I've been. Cheryl's the first to swoop in, all manic hostess energy and too many floaty scarves. For June, she's ladling coleslaw onto paper plates, like it's a sacred offering. You must try this one. It's got sultanas in it. Oh, good weaponized raisins. Nothing says family celebration like mayonnaise and fruit in the same mouthful. She's got that look in her eye, the kind of cheer that's either fueled by Prosecco or unprocessed trauma from her third divorce, probably both. Dad's next. He greets me with a hug so tight, it felt like he was trying to either crush my spine or guilt. Honestly, could have gone either way. It's that awkward. Too long embrace blokes do when they want to say, we're fine now, right? Without actually addressing the small issue of emotional blackmail and mild financial hostage-taking. The garden, by the way, looks like someone tried to recreate Love Island on a Lidl budget. Fairy lights tangled like pubic hair in a plug socket, dodgy fold-out chairs from someone's boot sale, and a Bluetooth speaker blaring 2010's greatest hits like we've all collectively agreed to pretend time stopped at Ollie Murs. I count 3 inflatable flamingos and not a single shred of dignity. And then there's him, that weird bloke from Cheryl's side who once tried to sell me Herbalife at Nan's wake. I swear he's wearing the same knockoff Armani top and still calls himself a wellness coach. Despite looking like he's powered by Greg's and misplaced rage, he gives me a nod like we've shared trauma, when all we've actually shared is a dodgy sausage roll and a mutual dislike of sobriety. Something's off. I can feel it in my bones. You know when you walk into a room and it's just tense? Like the air's been pre-seasoned with secrets? Yeah, it's not just the suspiciously pink chicken or the overwhelming stench of lynx, Africa trying to mask desperation. There's a vibe. Like everyone rehearsed something and I missed the script. Even the dog looks guilty. And he's too thick to feel shame. So I crack open the lager, take a sip, and mentally prepare myself. Because this isn't just a BBQ, it's a bloody stage play. And I've walked right into Act E2 of a performance called Let's Make Jamie Feel Like a Selfish Bastard. Curtains up. Right. So I'm mid-sip of my lukewarm beer, mentally weighing up whether I've got time to fake a phone call and leg it. When in he strolls, loafers, pressed chinos, smug little gob that screams I use the phrase per my last email in real life. Dad, glowing with the kind of pride he normally reserves for discounted steaks, goes, this is Phil, like he's just introduced me to the bloody milkman, not the ambush solicitor he's brought to the family BBQ. Phil, of course he's called Phil. You don't get surprise lawyered by a Nigel or a Keith. It's always a Phil. The sort of man who calls his wife the Mrs., thinks balsamic vinegar is continental, and probably owns novelty cufflinks shaped like pound signs. He's got this briefcase on proper leather, not even fake, and that weird hair that's been gelled into submission like his soul. You can just smell the overpriced legal advice radiating off him. Cheryl, bless her menopausal madness, gives it the old, "Oh, he's just a family friend," while handing him a plate of burnt corn and passive aggression. A family friend, yeah? What kind of family friend brings A4 plastic, wallets, and a contract template to a garden do? If this is her idea of social mingling, I dread to think what she does on Christmas. Probably invites a bailiff and calls it a festive intervention. Phil gives me that solicitor smile. You know the one. Like he's already invoicing me in his head and says, "Lovely to meet you, heard a lot about you," which is solicitor code for, "I've read the emails where they slag you off." I clock the documents in his hand, neat little stack, corner clipped. Laminated tab dividers, for Christ's sake. This man didn't just pop round for a sausage, and he came here with intent. I glance at Dad. He's suddenly pretending to be busy with the barbecue, like poking sausages in a line somehow absolves him of betrayal. Honestly, I've seen murderers look less suspicious. He's got that overeager casualness people get when they're trying to act, like they're not hiding a body under the decking. And then it hits me, and this is the plan. This is what the coleslaw, the fairy lights, the frozen lager were for. It wasn't about reconciliation or reconnecting, or bringing the family together. It was a bloody sting operation. Operation Guilt Trip, sponsored by Tesco, burgers, and emotionally constipated parenting. I suddenly feel like I'm on one of those hidden camera shows. Except the only prize is getting emotionally blackmailed into signing over the last thing Granddad ever gave me. And the worst bit? They genuinely thought this would work. That I'd just nod along like some character in a BBC drama about middle-class betrayal. Go, "Oh, all right then, thanks for the burger. Here's my signature and also my dignity." Phil clears his throat like he's about to deliver a sermon, and I swear to God I nearly burst out laughing. Because of course this is my life. Of course there's a solicitor in the garden, next to the wheelie bin waiting to discuss my options. I mean, why not? Who needs therapy when you've got legally binding trauma dressed up as a barbecue? I take another sip of my sad, warm beer. I look Phil square in the eye. And I think, you've no idea, mate. You've turned up to a game of emotional chess with a bloody Connect 4 board. So there I am, plate of limp lettuce in one hand, half a sausage in the other. When I get the look, you know the one. The "we're about to ruin your day, but let's pretend it's a chat" look. Dad sidles over like he's in a crime drama, muttering, "Can we have a quick word?" Which, in my family, is code for, "Prepare to be emotionally mugged behind the garage." He ushers me to the side like I've just been caught stealing. Calpol from a Boots self-checkout. Suddenly it's all hushed voices and solemn expressions, like they're staging an intervention or planning a low-budget coup. We just want to talk. As a family. Oh, here we go. Nothing good has ever followed that sentence. It's always the prelude to either someone asking for money or announcing a second cousin's been arrested for something involving livestock. And there he is, Phil, sat on a garden chair like a middle manager at a disciplinary hearing. Papers out, pen in hand, smugness turned up to 11. Cheryl's hovering nearby, pretending to rearrange some paper plates, but clearly trying to eavesdrop without knocking over the fairy lights. Phil opens his little plastic folder, you know, the kind usually reserved for dental records or dodgy loan applications, and slides out a few neatly printed pages. "It's just a proposal," he says, in that voice people use when they're about to propose something utterly mental. What he means is, we've drawn up something ridiculous and need you to sign it before the pork goes cold. Now the proposal, I use that term loosely, the way you might call a damp shed a garden office. Basically, it's a thinly veiled daylight robbery with a serif font. They want me to forfeit 60% 60 of Granddad's inheritance so it can be redistributed sensibly among the family. Sensibly, apparently, meaning Cheryl's already got her eye on a brand new Kia Sportage, and Dad's muttering something about finally getting the conservatory insulated. I stare at the page, then at Dad, then at Phil, who's blinking at me like I'm being unreasonable for not immediately rolling over and handing over a 5-figure check in exchange for half a lukewarm burger and a guilt trip. Dad's pulling his "this hurts me more than it hurts you" face, which is hilarious considering the man once grounded me for sneezing near his car keys. And then the best bit, the emotional pitch. "It's about family, son. Granddad would have wanted us to support each other." Granddad? Who explicitly said, and I quote, "If your father so much as looks at this money, punch him." But sure, let's just pretend the man wanted his legacy blown on LED, decking and a motorized foot spa. It's laughable, or it would be if it didn't sting so much, because underneath all the nonsense, all the passive-aggressive paperwork and backyard manipulation, there's still that stupid little part of me, the kid who used to wait for Dad to turn up on a Sunday and not be hungover, that wants this to be about love, about trust, about something other than just money. But it's not, is it? It's about control, about guilt, about making me the bad guy for having boundaries and a functioning moral compass. I lean back, cross my arms, and smile. That kind of tight, polite smile you reserve for strangers who ask if you've thought about smiling more. I say nothing. Just let them sit in the silence. Watch them squirm. Because if they think I'm going to sign my name under redistributed sensibly, while Cheryl's on Auto Trader and Phil's already penciled in a ski holiday, they've underestimated how very much like Granddad I actually am. I sat there, calm, composed, smiling like someone who's about to set a bridge on fire and walk away in slow motion. You see, I've watched enough true crime documentaries and lived through enough family meetings to know exactly how this goes. Keep your enemies close and your emotionally manipulative relatives closer. Let them think they've won. Let them monologue. Let them bask in the smug glow of their own delusion. So I nodded, I smiled. I even sipped the warm, flat Fanta Cheryl handed me like it wasn't the liquid embodiment of disappointment. It tasted like it had been open since Brexit. Still I drank it, like a condemned man accepting his last meal. Only instead of steak and whiskey, I got orange sadness in a paper cup. Phil, bless him, was absolutely loving the sound of his own voice, waffling on about redistribution and familial equity as if he hadn't just tried to rob me with a biro and a plastic wallet. Cheryl was doing that smug, helpful smile middle-aged women perfect just before they ruin your credit score. And Dad, well, he had that twinkle in his eye. The one he gets when he thinks he's being clever, like when he tried to write off his, Sky Sports subscription as a mental health expense. I leaned back in my seat, looked them all dead in the eye. Then I reached into my bag and slow, deliberate, dramatic, and said, in the calmest, most villain in a BBC thriller tone I could manage, "Very interesting. I brought a document, too." You could have heard the Prosecco bubbles stop mid-fizz. Cheryl physically recoiled like I'd just pulled out a live snake. Dad froze, hand midair with a chicken drumstick, like a tragic Shakespearean ghost. And Phil, his face went from, "I've got this in the bag," to, "I've just shat myself in a client meeting in 0.2 seconds. I pulled out the envelope, thick, crisp, legal-looking, one of those posh ones with the peel-off strip, the kind that screams, "I know people," which, for the record, I don't. But they don't need to know that. It's all about vibes. I placed it on the table, gently, like a warning shot. "Thought I'd get a second opinion," I said, casual as you like. You know, just in case I was about to sign away my dead grandfather's final wishes for the sake of a hot tub and a set of solar-powered garden gnomes. Phil tried to laugh. One of those awkward, nasal little chuckles that sounds like a kettle giving up. "Well, we can go through the details together. No need to make this adversarial." "Oh no," I said, opening my own envelope with surgical flair. "Let's make it adversarial. Let's really lean in." Because inside my envelope wasn't just a document, it was Granddad's actual will. The final, unedited, no you can't rewrite this you goblin version. The one he'd stashed in his biscuit tin, right under the rich teas, along with an envelope of emergency fivers and a list of everyone he thought was a tosser. Yes, Dad made the list twice. And there, in black and white, in his shaky but legally binding handwriting, "I leave everything to my grandson. The only one with a spine. Tell the others to jog on." I didn't even have to say it. I just slid the page across like a poker player dropping a royal flush. Phil blinked. Cheryl gasped. Dad muttered something about disrespect, which is rich coming from a man who once pawned his own mother's engagement ring for pub money. And me, I just smiled, sat back, and took another sip of that god-awful warm Fanta like it was vintage champagne. Because if they were going to try and play me at the manipulation game, they should have at least checked the board first. I am the board, so just when they thought they'd weathered the worst of it, Dad doing his best. Impression of a betrayed saint. Cheryl clutching her Prosecco like it was a life preserver. and Phil already mentally calculating how many hours of billable time he could squeeze from this family drama. I pulled out the letter. Not a letter. Not some vague sentimental waffle, written on pastel stationery with a picture of a robin in the corner. No. This was Granddad's original, unfiltered, not at all legally reviewed, stream of consciousness-style verbal evisceration, written in biro, on the back of a lethal receipt, with underlines. I unfolded it with all the ceremony of a priest revealing the 10 Commandments. If the commandments included personal vendettas and a thinly veiled hatred of solar panels, I said very gently, it's not the will. It's the letter. You know, the one he left me in his biscuit tin. Just next to the packet of emergency. Rich teas and that weird old key we never found the lock for. The room, well, garden one, went silent. You could hear a sausage sizzle itself to death on the disposable barbecue. I cleared my throat and began to read. To my grandson, the only one of the lot with his head screwed on straight, and his hands out of my wallet. Nice opener, punchy. Dad visibly flinched. Cheryl did a sharp inhale through the teeth. The same noise she makes when petrol goes up by 3p. If you're reading this, I finally kicked the bucket, probably while shouting at Lorraine on the telly. If there's any argument about where the money's going, remind your father he once tried to write off a kebab as a business expense. I paused, looked straight at Dad. He looked away. Into the flower bed, where he belongs, frankly. Don't let Cheryl guilt trip you. She's been circling my pension since 2009 like a seagull around a chip van. Cheryl made a noise. Somewhere between a scoff and a suppressed scream, she was already pink from the sun, but now she looked like a steamed gammon with hoop earrings. And as for your father, well, that man would sell his own shadow if he thought he could charge VAT on it. And there it was, the line. The one that made the neighbors' wind chimes jangle in shock. The one that made Phil's forehead break into that weird solicitor sweat, where you're not sure if it's nerves or just the soul slowly leaking out. I could feel it. That precise moment, the moral ground beneath their feet gave way, like watching someone step confidently onto a patch of wet decking in flip-flops. The best part? The letter went on. Pages, actually. Turns out Granddad had thoughts, opinions, and absolutely no filter once he hit 87 and discovered whiskey miniatures on offer at Aldi. There were whole paragraphs slagging off Cheryl's home decor, too many signs that say live, laugh, love, she doesn't do any of them, and a full section where he described Dad as the human equivalent of buffering. I didn't even need to read it all. Just a few key hits, enough to make it very, very clear that this wasn't some tragic misunderstanding. Granddad hadn't forgotten anyone. He'd remembered them, in detail, and still said no thanks. Mic drop. I folded the letter back up, slipped it neatly into the envelope like it was evidence in a courtroom drama, and took a long, slow sip of my now completely flat Fanta. Still horrible. Still symbolic. And in that moment, surrounded by dodgy legal tactics, burnt sausages, and broken dreams of a new Kia Sportage, I realized something. Granddad didn't just leave me the money. He left me closure, in ink, on a lethal receipt. And honestly, that's more valuable than any inheritance. Now, I'm not saying I live for awkward silences, but if they sold this one in packets at Sainsbury's, I'd have it on toast. We're talking proper full fat. Sunday roast levels of awkward. No one breathed. No one blinked. Even the fairy lights seemed to dim slightly like they'd clocked the tension and gone. Not our vibe. Phil, poor lad, looked like someone had unplugged him at the mains. All that solicitor swagger drained right out of his face like warm gravy off cheap Yorkshire puds. His eyelids did this rapid fluttering thing, like a fax machine trying to process betrayal. He clearly wasn't trained for this level of emotional carnage. He has probably got a module on client conflict, but not one on savage letter. From dead pensioner explodes your inheritance scam mid-barbecue. Cheryl, bless her, and all her passive-aggressive tea. Towels went silent, fully terrifyingly, gloriously mute. First time since 2014 when the Wi-Fi cut out during Strictly and she had to reboot the router with her bare hands and a prayer. And Dad, oh Dad. The man who once claimed we're all just trying our best while deleting my name off. Granddad's utility bills. He sat there staring at the lawn looking like someone had pissed on his decking and then drawn rude words in it. He had the expression of a bloke who's just realized the cruise. He was fantasizing about the one with the balcony suite and unlimited breakfast buffet has in fact set sail without him. And Cheryl and her Kia Sportage dreams. Meanwhile, me, I just sat there, Crossed legs, elbow on the cheap plastic arm of a garden chair that had clearly seen one too many. Bonfire night, sipped my flat sun-warmed Fanta like it was a vintage Merlot. Swirled it a bit for effect. Watched the dream of their gravy train float off into the ether like a helium balloon with commitment issues. And then, because timing is everything, I stood up, smooth, deliberate BBC, one drama style. You know, the kind of slow rise that says, "I'm not angry, I'm just incredibly done." Looked at the trio of them. Solicitor stepmother disappointment in a polo shirt, and said, "Anyway, I've got a real family event to get to. It's called boundaries." Now, I know it's petty. I know it's theatrical. But in that moment, I swear I heard Granddad cackle from the grave. Or maybe it was just next door's dog reacting to the sheer shade. I walked off through the garden like I had a wind machine at my back, past the cheap bunting, the sad hummus, the half-deflated paddling pool no one had dared to use. Didn't look back, not once, because if you look back at a scene like that, you're either about to forgive someone or burst out laughing. I was in no mood for either. Got to the front gate, flicked a bit of grass off my shoe, and thought, yeah, that'll do. Sometimes the only way to win with family is to leave them sitting in their own awkward silence, marinating in the mess they made, wondering how it all went so spectacularly tits up. And honestly, that silence, absolutely bloody delicious. Now, you'd think that would be the end of it, wouldn't you? Walk off into the sunset with your Fanta and your dignity and let the dust settle like you're in some low-budget Channel 5 drama. But no, because when it comes to my family, there's always an encore. It started with the group chat, that cursed digital hellscape where emojis go to die and passive aggression breeds. Like mold in a student flat, WhatsApp absolutely exploded. Blue ticks, double messages. People going off topic to ask who's bringing coleslaw to the next get-together, like we hadn't just experienced. Emotional Chernobyl in the back garden. Dad sent a voice note. A full 2 minutes of what I think was meant to be him explaining his side, but it just sounded like a sad man crying in a B&Q car park. You know the vibe? Bit of a sniffle. A rogue windscreen wiper in the background, heavy breathing like he's been leaning against a pallet of mulch bags, trying to muster the courage to say, "I just think we should move on." Then Cheryl. Oh, Cheryl. She took to Facebook like a woman scorned and holding a bottle of Echo Falls. Posted some cryptic status that read, "Funny how money changes people." With that weird combo of broken heart and sparkle emojis, like she's both grieving and going clubbing. Now, I could have let it slide. I could have taken the high road. But unfortunately for them, I've got Wi-Fi, a petty streak, and absolutely no remaining respect for the adults in my life. So I replied with a gif. You know the one? The bloke firing a money gun with a wink. Yeah, that one. Sent it straight into the group chat and liked my own message. Because if you're gonna be a villain, be a confident one. Then came Auntie Brenda, absolute icon, a woman who once stole a jar of pickled onions from Asda because she didn't like the self-checkout tone. She piped up with, "Well, fair play. They tried it. He played them. And I'm telling you now, if Brenda's on your side, you've already won." Mom hasn't said a word, which is worse, because when she goes quiet, it usually means she's gathering receipts. Last time she went silent for this long, she resurfaced with a laminated spreadsheet and ruined Christmas. 2019. Cousin Kelly texted me separately with, you're savage. I love it. Which I'm fairly sure was meant to be supportive, but also definitely came from a place of deep fear. And to be fair, that's fine. Let them fear me. Let them all fear the one who read the letter and didn't flinch. At this point, the family tree isn't so much a tree. It's a tangle of dead twigs and someone's taped a laminated quote from The Secret to the trunk. And somehow, through all this, the only one with an ounce of self-awareness is Brenda, who once told a taxi driver he had cursed energy because he missed the turning for Lidl. But I digress. The point is, the aftermath wasn't peace. It was digital warfare. In group chats, in DMs, on walls, in emojis, and passive-aggressive likes on old photos from 2018. And weirdly, I don't feel guilty, not one bit. Because if defending myself against greedy relatives and emotionally manipulative status updates makes me the villain, then fine. I'll wear the cape. I'll wear the cape and I'll strut past your folding chairs like I invented wind. Some families have trauma. Mine has a WhatsApp group. And that, frankly, is so much worse. Here's the thing they never saw coming. The twist in the tale, the plot line that would have had the EastEnders drumbeat if it weren't, playing out in a sunburnt garden in Kent. They thought they set the trap. Dad, Cheryl, Phil the solicitor with the handshake of a damp mop and the aftershave that smelt like regret in midlife. Crisis in a bottle. They thought this was going to be the moment I folded, that I'd crumble under the combined pressure of family tension, a barbecue chicken leg, and someone waving a revised agreement, like it was a bloody golden ticket to family approval. What they forgot, bless them, is that I've been raised in this chaos. This wasn't new to me. This wasn't a trap. It was an audition, and I turned up in full costume, darling, because I didn't walk into that garden naive. I walked in like it was a courtroom drama, and I was both the accused and the judge, wearing Primark trainers and a look that said, "Go on then, let's see what fresh hell you've prepared." They tried emotional manipulation with dodgy documents and watery smiles, and that classic British move where they offer you a sausage and a guilt trip in the same breath. But here's the kicker. They brought a solicitor. I brought receipts, literal and emotional, including a letter from Granddad that read like Shakespeare. If Shakespeare hated his own children and had a deep understanding of council tax fraud, he didn't raise a mug. He raised a very patient, very tired, very over-it petty king. And kings don't sign. Kings sip lukewarm Fanta and watch you drown in your own desperation. You know what really got me, though? They underestimated me. After everything, after years of being the quiet one, the sensitive one, the one who was too polite to say when the potatoes were lumpy or the joke was racist, they thought that version of me would show up, like I hadn't grown teeth, like I didn't know exactly how this dance goes. Round and round until someone snaps and someone signs and someone says, "Let's not ruin the day." But that version of me, he stayed home. He's on sabbatical, doing yoga, eating lentils, learning how to block phone numbers without flinching. What showed up instead was someone who knows their worth, knows the game, and plays it better. Because you can't trap someone who's already mapped the exits. You can't gaslight someone who brings a torch. And you definitely can't guilt someone who's got a laminated letter from a dead pensioner calling you out by name. They wanted drama. They got theater. They wanted control. They got a performance. And I got peace. And possibly a nice payout if Cheryl doesn't find a loophole in the next 3 weeks. So no, they didn't set the trap. They set the stage. And I walked right through it. Didn't trip. Didn't flinch. Didn't sign a bloody thing. Cue the slow fade. Cue the theme music. Cue the overhead drone shot of me walking off across a patchy lawn with the kind of strut you only get after telling 3 people to sit with their shame and their soggy coleslaw. Because in the end, this wasn't about money. It was about legacy. And the one thing Granddad knew for sure was that if anyone could take the chaos, the silence, the guilt, and still make it poetic, it was me. Roll credits. Fade to black. Delete the group chat. And scene.